ASMR. Hey, listeners. Friendly reminder at the top of the episode to join our Patreon.
Join it.
Amber, what's Patreon? Well, I'll tell you. It takes a lot of time, effort, and resources to produce this podcast. So we appreciate those listeners like you who have decided, you know what, I can give $1, $2, $5 a month to contribute to the Patreon. So please get on over there and do that. We do monthly book giveaways. We do monthly book giveaways at the end of each month. The munch of the month. What if that was a thing? This month we'll be giving away The Underground Railroad by Colson Whitehead at the end of the month. Oh, actually, it's not going to be at the end of the month. It's going to be at the top of the month. It's going to be February 1st. But before we do that, I just want to shout out 3 beautiful, lovely, talented, incredible, uniqueness, nerve, and talent patrons who just joined the party. That's going to be AB, Taylor, and Obadiah.
Thank you.
Obadiah, you got in like 5 minutes ago from us recording this, so we thank you for just adding on. Now what's wrong with me? I just made a boo boo, and so I feel bad about it because I rarely make mistakes. But anyway,
you make mistakes all the time. This one I actually did say something. Usually I let them slip because you're a little bit more sensitive.
I don't make a lot of mistakes, but I did recently make a mistake on a thing that Ben and I were supposed to complete. Now we have to re-record it. It's not a big deal. But anyway, if you would like to join our Patreon and support the shit show that is Amber and Ben and soon to be Lil Wild Lynn, you can find that link in the episode notes. Now let's get started with the show.
And you can also just give $1 a month too, which is super cool.
$1.
$1, $2
will make me holler, honey boo boo. Remember honey boo boo?
Mm-mm.
Oh God. No. All right, Ben. Here we go. Welcome to the Sci-Fi Sci under the Believe Podcast Network. It is indeed a podcast about Black science fiction, fantasy, and staying on the same page in this marriage. Today, for episode 69. Giggity. We'll be discussing the film Night of the Kings. Night of the Kings was directed by Phillip LaCote. He's French, so well, he speaks French. Sorry, I shouldn't have said he's French. But this film is based mostly in the Ivory Coast. But before we get started on this film that we watched on Hulu, Ben, how are you doing, beloved?
I started my first improv class on Thursday, and it was so fucking awesome. Amber signed me up for it.
Well, this isn't your first improv class. Let's be clear.
Did I say it was my first?
Mm-hmm.
My first improv class of the session. Right. So I started my first improv class of the session, which is I'm on the 3rd level. Yay. And so lots of improv, I guess you could say studios, or what do you call them? Improv schools. Improv schools. They have levels. Level 1, level 2, level 3, level 4, level 5.
And this is the first one that we're taking separately.
Yeah.
Because we took 1 and 2 together. So what's it like to be, in a class without your favorite scene partner?
Yeah, it's cool. I got to play a soap opera Starbuck woman who is a shit stirrer. That was my favorite character. I really leaned into that. And then I played like a very bro-y, like popped my collar, like does shots of Malort type of dude.
You want to
hear that impression?
Yes.
Hey, bro, yo, you want to do a shot of Malort? Yeah. I just I took Tammy out. Oh, it was great. Oh yeah.
Well, what'd she say?
Oh yeah,
Did she give you head, dude?
Oh yeah. Wait, how'd you know about that?
Yeah, well, I mean, chicks are supposed to give you head. What else are they for?
Oh, I mean, I'm more into my feelings. Like, we just talked about feelings.
Oh, no way. She went for that?
Of course. Like, I'm a feminist, bro. Like, I do Malort, but I'm also a feminist. Like,
oh, bro, that's kind of weird. Why would you be a feminist?
Because
who hurt you, bro?
Because the Cubs hire chicks now.
Oh, is that a thing?
Yeah.
I don't read or write, so.
I mean,
and sing.
Yeah, I don't know.
Good job.
So it's like you do,
Wait, so what was the soap opera Starbucks thing? Was it a Starbucks employee
Yeah.
that sings opera?
No, soap opera. You know soap opera? Soaps?
Oh, duh. I'm an idiot.
No, you're not an idiot.
So it was it's like like Days of Our Lives, Bold and the Beautiful, but Starbucks edition.
Yeah.
So very dramatic and crying, but everybody's also like wearing a full face of glamorous makeup.
Yeah, so I looked and I mentioned that I wore Prada. And,
look at you knowing brands.
Yeah.
Name 3 more brands.
Gucci and Fendi.
Because of the dogs.
Because of the dogs.
So you got Prada, Gucci, Fendi, and
a Nightlight Podcast right here. I'm wearing Nightlight Podcast shirt. Which
you
is
literally can't name another brand.
I can't. Sorry. Target.
That's what the girls sing in the songs. Louis, Gucci, Fendi, Target. I love that.
How are you doing?
I'm doing great. We have done a lot today.
We have. You keep me working.
The sun is setting a little bit, so I'm, I get worried.
We're supposed to go
like a witch in that way.
The Art Institute.
Yes, but we got so busy today doing things. But we were super productive, and I don't know, that always makes me feel good when we could like kind of clean up the space. And I'm just really excited. You know how you sit down and put some things together? I finally added like a couple of the brands I've collaborated with to my personal website.
Yeah.
Because I was like, I should make this easy for people to find, because I've been getting a couple more DMs and things, which is amazing, because that's like sustainability for our family. Yay. And so I was like, I should probably just have a Rolodex of some of my work. And sometimes it's really nice to put all that together. Or today I even watched the very first TikTok I made, and it was so bad, but so funny.
It was on brand. You stayed on brand.
It was very on brand. So it's been really nice.
Clueless, not really knowing what you're doing. I remember your first.
Oh, you saw it?
Yeah.
Right. You remember that time before the internet knew you? Good times. Remember when I was just a comedian doing my own thing?
Well, then you had to
and
bring
now
me
I'm
into
Ben's wife. Yuck.
Or I am your husband.
People still DM me all the time being like, oh my God, you're Ben's wife. It's like, this is my page.
Mm-hmm.
My name's right there.
Yeah. So who's main character? Who's the main character?
Still me. Just block that
Who's main
person.
character? Not who's the main character, just who's main character.
I'll just block that person. But no, I'm very excited for you to start classes and just be in that creative space, because we do love to create. It's very important to create.
It's the most fun thing to do. I wish all basic needs were met and humans could just create shit all the time.
Yeah.
That everyone could find that one thing that they would want to create as far as art, because everyone has art inside them. It doesn't necessarily make it good or successful, but if everyone was just allowed to pursue the art of their heart, we would have a lot less problems. What
a wordsmith you are. I was thinking about that, just like, you know how you'll just sit and reflect on some of your fears. So one of my fears is like wild not being creative, and how I'd be like, where did I go wrong? You don't like the color, you don't like to sing, you don't like to dance. And they're just like, no, I just like to, hang out. It's like, well, what are you passionate about? Like my biggest fear is my child not finding their passion. Or even when you think about your parents, do you ever think like, I wonder if my dad has ever colored, like in a coloring book? Like that's something I just cannot see my father doing. Or like making any macaroni art, or writing a poem.
My mom, yeah. My dad tried to learn how to play guitar, and he gave up. And I wish he went back to it. He's really I wanted, we did one podcast session together where we have a book club, and I need to meet with him again. But you keep me busy as your employee.
You can meet with your dad anytime you want. But yeah, I guess the most creative thing I've ever seen my father do is like cooking. Like that's kind of where he gets to shine creatively. Yeah. But like other than that, he doesn't. Or maybe like mixing drinks.
Or insulting you during spades or bags.
He's good at insulting. But even one day, me and Alicia were working on a puzzle, and we were like, why don't you come out here and join us? He was like, puzzle. I was like, yeah, it's just a meditative exercise. Would you like to join us with the puzzle? And he was like, no. Why would y'all be putting together a puzzle? It's like, okay.
It's like,
this is
can you drink
this is my one mandatory check-in with you for today. So
Just
I've
kidding.
fulfilled my task. You know what else is super funny?
I feel like my sister Rachel is a little like that. She doesn't really create anything.
Yeah.
Because she's busy. Because I guess she made, but she's constantly. I guess she plays with her kids and she likes to hang out with her kids. Her nephew and
yours as well, right?
My
and mine,
both. Well, and then her son, and then her nephew, and so she does cool stuff with them. But I took her and her husband out to eat. Remember, we took them out to eat, and I was like, "What are y'all doing for fun?" They're like, and Rachel, my sister Rachel, was like, "I just don't have time."
Why are you naming names? Yeah, that's.
I'm gonna actually talk to her after this. I'll give her a call, check in with her.
Got it. No, what was I about to say about so you know how I just talked about my dad? This is so funny, but speaking of like other people we like to laugh at, our dog trainer, so we recently got a trainer for Gucci because we just want to make him as prepared as possible for this baby coming. We don't want him
eating wild.
Right.
Like coming home
which won't happen, but just like
a dead baby would be the worst.
Can you stop? Because that's not even... I guess it's funny, sure.
No, it's not funny. I'm sorry.
It's okay. But we're doing some training with Gucci, and our dog trainer, she's wonderful, but somehow she always brings up her daddy issues during the training sessions, doesn't she?
Yeah, well, she makes connections with how her dad is unable to do things.
Yes.
And so we, as dog parents, need to not be like her father.
Yes, but it's always like that. She's like, see, Gucci is struggling with this thing, but he doesn't, he needs time and patience to learn this thing. Like my father, he never had patience when we were learning things growing up.
She would give a solid example about her father, would try to teach her math, and you just need think time. And so when you point to a dog and say, hey, go, she's sort of, because you need reinforcement to say, give a command and just wait for a moment.
Right.
You repeat the command because you're a little bit more impatient. So she gave a solid analogy about, giving think time.
Yeah, but that's always her go-to.
Yeah, her go-to. Because
it'll be something just with her father.
It's easy to make fun of family.
Yeah, but it's not family. It is her dad every time. So every now and then I'll be like, hey, you good?
So. Well, you mostly talk about your father on the podcast in a negative light.
I talked about my mom.
And
my brother.
Oh yeah, you have.
Everybody can get some. Okay, well maybe I do as well. Anyway, you want to tell the people where we're gonna be in a couple weeks, where they can find us in Chicago?
Yeah, we're gonna have a meet and greet at the Science Fiction Capricon. We're gonna do a live podcast. We're gonna talk about Janelle Monáe. Mm-hmm. It's gonna be fucking awesome.
I didn't know we were doing a separate meet and greet. Is that a thing?
Yeah, I mean, So, sorry. I should probably tell you what we're doing. So, the way the structure of the podcasts are run the way that this Capricon is run is that you meet in these convention center rooms. We'll do our presentation, and then afterwards, you'll come up and talk to us, or you'll ask questions to us, and then we'll just hang out. And then you hang out. So you have an hour session. Generally, what happens is you do 45 minutes, 40 minutes, and then people sort of discuss the rest. But before and after, come and talk to us. We'll be there.
Okay, great.
It's a big convention center, so people are moving in and out, going different places. Omarion variant is going down.
That's great. Is that a real thing?
Yes.
Is that a real statistic?
Yes, it is.
Okay, great.
Yeah, the numbers are going down. Yes, the Omicron variant numbers in Chicago are going down. Whether Lightfoot is cheating the numbers and lying about them, that's a whole other story.
I just have to be prepared for meet and greets. I just need mental. I love meeting people, but it's just.
It's energy.
I need heads up. It's not even energy. It's just even when I go, I went to the bar.
Amber doesn't want to talk to you, listeners.
I do, but sometimes people get a little. One of the things I do well is making people feel like they know me. That's a strength of mine because I overshare and I cry a lot. I'm very vulnerable. But then, people will just go up to you and start rubbing your belly. So I have to mentally prepare.
Has that happened yet?
Yes, Ben. When I've seen people out in public.
That you know?
No, they don't know. They know me, but I don't know them.
Oh, so... This is the first time I'm hearing this.
Oh, I haven't told you that?
No.
It'll be people I know or don't know, which is fine. It'll just take me aback a little bit.
Yeah.
I'm just kind of like, oh, wait.
I've never seen that. That's never happened when I'm with you.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
You remember last night where like our friend just like went in and was like, "Oh yes," which I love him, but it's just something new for me.
Okay, yes. Yeah, so that's
think about like if everywhere you went, people just started rubbing your belly.
Yeah,
friends have done it, and people who are like, "Oh my God, I've seen your TikTok. Like, come here, you're pregnant. Congrats."
Okay, yeah, that's uncomfortable.
So I just have to mentally prepare.
The way I greet a lot of my friends is I go up, I'm like, "Hi," like friends.
Yeah,
you know,
when you're
I
pregnant,
hug them,
the handshake is a belly.
Yeah,
touch.
The handshake goes from that is uncomfortable.
Yeah, the books told me that like be prepared for that, and you can say yes or no, but it's just something I have to sometimes be like. People belly bumps are like golden tickets,
Mm-hmm.
Like people are like, "Oh, let me touch it for good luck."
Oh,
let me rub this thing.
As far as I guess
not golden
crossing over your consent or like radical consent.
Yeah, well, it's
space.
like that thing you rub before the big game.
Your dick. That's what I rub before the big game.
Oh my
You're
God,
my big game.
No.
This relationship is the big game.
Look,
I wake up every morning.
Is the big game.
I rub it for good luck.
Well, maybe I should think more about it. I remember as a kid, and this, I don't, correct me if I'm like way off, but we used to go to this like local peaking. Way off is it like if this is highly offensive? Proceeds to tell story. But when we used to go to Peking in, little Podunk, Athens, Georgia, they had this big Buddha at the front. Yeah. And we just all would just be rubbing on his belly. It's just, it was
fucking karma.
Right. Okay. That is a thing. No,
I'm saying people are rubbing your belly because you violated the Buddha's space when you rubbed his belly.
Probably. This is,
so yes, there's a fun story. I studied religion in university, and the tradition of the Fat Buddha is when Christians started to invade and colonize parts of Japan and bring this idea of Christianity, sort of to combat like the development of Santa Claus, like the fat Santa who gives kids presents. The Fat Buddha came about. Right. That was sort of like a response to that, to sort of make it more jolly, because the Buddha is not fat.
So the Buddha was a response to
Siddhartha
Santa.
Buddha is this,
which came
the
first?
legend.
Buddha came first, but
the fat Buddha came after Santa Claus.
Santa, as a counter protest.
Yeah, I'll put a link about the history of the Fat Buddha. I found it super, super intriguing how.
And then came the pregnant woman.
Yeah, so we have Buddha, Jesus, Santa Claus, Fat Buddha.
I'm Fat Buddha.
No, I'm saying historically.
You pointed at me. So
right, because you have these two religious traditions, Buddhism, and Christianity. Buddhism comes first, then Christianity, and then you get Santa Claus, but then you get
which
the
is
Fat
also
Buddha,
a religion.
which is part of Christianity.
The Church of Santa, yes.
Sign me up.
Saint Nicholas Church. All right. While you look that up, Ben, should I talk about what people are saying about this in these streets?
Absolutely.
Which is very biased because we are currently just reading the very positive Apple Podcast ratings that y'all submit. If you want, you can pull up some negative TikTok comments to balance things out, because I definitely... that we do get negative comments because everything on the internet has to have negative comments. It does balance out. But I caught myself seeing one today and I was like, no, get out of here. So I'll share that in a minute. But here are the Apple Podcast ratings from listeners like you. Remember, listeners, if you submit an Apple Podcast rating, we will be reading it on the show. Good, bad, weird, whatever. This one's from Ivory TC. Love the show. Your review of Lilith's Brood was so good, it made me want to read it again. I read it in college and immediately loved Octavia Butler's work. And now I can't get through the sex scene without laughing at Ben's comment on TikTok about if he had to do it. The connections you all make on the show, I'm so not used to saying you all. They wrote you out, but the connections y'all make on the show were so spot on. It makes me think in ways that I had not before, especially seeing as how so long ago the book was written compared to things going on right now. Keep up the great work. Thank you, Ivory TC. This one's from Yo Girl Joe. Great content. this podcast surprised me. I'm not into sci-fi or fantasy books, but this podcast is changing my mind, which is music to my ears. I know Amber and Ben from TikTok and the gram. Please watch Amber try to teach Ben about playing spades in the Black household. I laugh out loud. They have great conversations about books. Let me zoom this in. Oh, you girls getting on. They have great conversation about books and TV shows and movies by Black authors and creators. Amazing. They bring up things I don't think about, and I am a thinker. Check out this podcast. It's fresh, witty, honest, and thoughtful. It's only the beginning for Amber and Ben. Oh, blessings to you both in 2022, and congrats on the baby sci-fi as well. Oh, yeah, I love that. I love y'all. All of these are great. Okay, and then this last one's from K_later99. I'm always learning from Ben and Amber. I'm so happy I found you both on TikTok. I enjoyed your content so much that I had to give your podcast a listen. Unsurprisingly, I fell in love with your banter and your thoughts on the books and the movies you reviewed. And yes, I've definitely listened to every single episode. Oh my God, good for you, because those early episodes are crunchy.
Yeah.
But we figured out the audio.
I don't even listen to them.
Okay. I always look forward to hearing your opinions on different topics and being educated on things I may know a little about. Thank you for making your content that is educational yet entertaining and fun. Wishing you both
like
the
my classroom.
Best.
Entertaining and fun and educational.
Wishing you both the best, especially with your approaching parenthood. We love y'all so much. Look at me like looking at the camera. We really appreciate your very positive reviews and positive energy because like I said, there's a balance out there in the world. You ready to talk to me now? I was telling Ben that there is this camp of people who follow us and they're the think piece girls. They like to be like, can we talk about how actually like this couple is very toxic? Which I'm not going to argue with them about that.
Obviously they're correct.
But it's frustrating because people do this thing where they're like, notice how every video they put out is negative. And I'm like, okay, first of all, that's not true.
It's mostly true.
First of all.
Popular ones, yeah.
Well, so our maternity shoot wasn't positive.
You're right.
Or I haven't put out videos of me like crying. Not that that has to be.
That's negative.
I've put. Oh. I think that's like vulnerable content versus like us arguing content. Yeah. But
we don't argue. We debate. I think there's a difference. We have arguments in more of a scientific sense.
Well, here's the thing. Every application is supposed to serve a different function. So TikTok is going to be your short funnies. Instagram is going to be your longer full stories. YouTube is going to be your more like vulnerable content. Sci-Fi Sci is going to be your nerdy book club. Like, so there might be some truth to what they're saying, but to that I say, go follow on other platforms. And to that they say, we do.
Good.
We do. We follow you on everything and we still hate you, which is great. So with that being said, Ben, we are sitting at a ripe 23 minutes in. Are you ready to talk about the actual movie, Night of the Kings?
Googled helped me find this film. I was looking up just Black fantasy creators. African.
So yes is the answer to your question. Okay.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm ready. Yeah, I'm going to jump into how we discovered this. But to be honest, this film was pretty confusing at times, or it was so symbolic and fantastical and whimsical that I felt the need to it has the potential to make you feel a little stupid because this is film.
Yeah, this is cinema.
This is cinema, and it's amazing and beautiful and absolutely stunning. But afterwards, I went ahead and watched a symposium by the African. Yeah, so I watched a symposium with a bunch of people interviewing the director. Gucci, come here. Let me take this lead.
I mean, this is going to be so fun when we have a kid.
Yeah.
The episodes are going to be
coming in and out.
A hot 5 minutes.
We'll do like 15 minutes. So, yeah, I had to watch the African American Film Critic Association run a symposium interviewing the director, which was super, super helpful. And then I read 2 articles, one from Polygon and then one from the Rogert and Ebert website, which was fantastic.
Did you say Rogert and Ebert?
Rogert and Ebert.
Sure. Keep going.
We'll put both of those links in there. You ever watch a film and realize that you need some, like, do some homework afterwards?
Yes, which I used to be like, ooh, yes. But sometimes it just feels pretentious. It's like, give me enough so I'm intrigued enough to go look up a think piece, but I don't need to in order to fully understand it.
Mm-hmm. I see what you mean. Like, you could watch this film and leave still understanding a semblance of what had happened.
Yeah, but you still need, like, help me understand what happened here at the end or whatever. I felt that way about, like, I've said this in the past, but it's like watching Get Out versus Us, right? Like Get Out, like Jordan Peele's films, if you're not familiar. Get Out felt very much like, damn, that was good. Like, it'd be cool to read a think piece, but I really don't have to understand it. Whereas Us was like, I need to watch that again. Like, I might have missed a couple of things, and then sometimes you're like, actually, I didn't miss anything. It was just like a little bit harder and a little bit more complicated. And there was a
you have to actively watch it.
You have to actively watch it, and I don't know. So we have said this in the past because we have watched foreign films in the past, but it just takes a different kind of mindfulness to watch foreign films. Not only because you're reading all of the subtitles, so you can't look away, but there's a pacing that's just very different. I looked over the bin, and I probably sound like a freaking idiot, but I looked over the bin at one point. I was like, why does every foreign film feel like they really rev you up at the beginning, and then there's these long scenes, which I do love, but nothing's tied up until like the last 5 to 15 minutes of the movie. And so that's what it felt like to me. Obviously, I'm making a generalization, and I'm horribly problematic. But if you watch this film with us, you will notice, like, I remember at the beginning of this film, my heart was beating. I was like, oh my God, like, what is about to go down right here? Like, especially when this one trans character was being, like, surrounded and circled by this sea of, like, hyper masculine men. And I was, like, truly, like, looking away and very nervous for her. And then
before you get any more to, like, details, I think we should give a summary because it doesn't really make sense without.
Well, can I just
finish your thought. Yeah.
And then near the end, I was kind of like, woo, how many minutes we got left?
Yeah.
Like, so I just wanted to say that I thought that this movie was going to be more like a bell curve, and it really kind of, it was more like a heartbeat.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Sure.
Okay, sorry. Give a quick summary.
Yeah, so a nameless boy is brought to a prison outside of Abidjan called Lamaka, and so Abidjan is a city in the Ivory Coast, and Lamaka is a real prison that recently, or I think a little while ago, there was a massive riot there. And so there's this intense prison hierarchy and traditions, and the prison is basically run by the prisoners. There is a warden,
correct,
but the warden doesn't do anything, or really can't do anything, doesn't have enough guards.
He's like a substitute teacher at this point.
Yeah,
it's like the kids run the class.
Sounds exactly. That's a great analogy. And so this guy who runs it, they call it the Dongoro. His name is Blackbeard, and he decides to choose this young boy to be a storyteller, and the storyteller is called a Roman. And he does this because he is slowly getting sick, and when you get sick, the leader is supposed to kill themselves and relinquish their power.
Yeah, there's this rule, which is kind of strange because it's like, but you're already sick. Just die naturally.
Yeah, I mean, traditions.
I got you. Yeah, no.
Right.
It's a movie. Always, yeah.
Well, just even religious traditions, like, why do we eat bread, instead of for the Eucharist, right? Like when you take communion, why do we have bread?
Got it.
Like,
I thought you just meant like regular old white bread. I'm like,
yeah,
because it tastes good with peanut butter. I don't know.
Well, yeah. Why this instead of that? Like tradition has to do with reasons, and you could assume that if you're weak in a prison where it's a very intense, people are living on top of each other, the only privacy are just these like sheets they put up. Like it would make sense that the leader can no longer just live anymore.
So fun exercise. If you could be the leader of something that you really believed in, but if you got sick in that leadership role, you had to kill yourself, would you step up and be a leader?
I mean, you're asking, would I follow a tradition that I have sort of decided to accept?
Yeah.
Like, what do you mean, would I step in? I mean, I'm sick, so I have to follow the tradition and kill myself.
I'm saying, but would you knowingly want to be someone's successor, knowing that your fate is eventually having to kill yourself? Would it be worth the role if you had to end your life in a suicide?
I think that's a very unfair question. Because
that's literally what happened in the movie.
Yeah, and obviously everyone wants to be the next leader. Well, there are people...
No, some people like to be followers. Some people like to be moths, and some people like to be butterflies.
Oh, yeah, I would not... I would not... All right, well, okay, the question's tricky, like, because if I was the person's right-hand man, then yes, I would want to stand up if I had worked my way to that. I think I would probably want to position No, I don't.
Would you want to be a king if you knew you had to eventually kill yourself, or a leader
if I
of
got
anything?
sick? No, probably not. I don't want to do that. I don't want to be a leader.
Okay.
And in a prison.
It doesn't have to be a prison. It's just
like
it could be anywhere. It could be a school leader. It could be a councilman.
That's
it could
really
be
weird.
It could be a leader in whatever is your current locus, and it can apply to what you're doing now.
I think it's so tricky to sort of put ourselves in that shoe, because in some sense I am a leader currently in my job. That's part of my job. And so I'm
sure this
in
is
the
a question
hierarchy of the prison, a leader has the leaders in this prison get access to PS4. They can play PlayStation.
That's not what happened, but I
did.
I smell what you're stepping in.
No, they did.
I didn't see a PS4 in the movie, Ben.
Yeah, so you're not familiar with the way the controllers look. There's a PS4 in the movie.
Okay, well,
I'll have to show it to you later.
That wasn't clear, but so in that system where you would have access to more resources, you would have more control over how things are ran. That. You would step up and
then
be a leader.
just pretend not to be sick, sort of like what Blackbeard does for some of the
but he's on an oxygen tank at that point, so it's like, bro,
you're obviously sick. But I guess
you're so bad at not pretending to be sick, though.
Yeah, well, with you.
You remember that first time you got sick in our relationship? I was like, wow, he is a baby.
Yeah, I didn't want to go to work that day.
Right. Point
being is probably. I mean, I just don't want to be living in that prison.
Of course not. But I was asking the question, and we'll take a quick break after this, but I was asking the question just in general. It's like, I'm sure Martin Luther King had to really say to himself, obviously he didn't die in a suicide, obviously, but he probably just had to say to himself, am I willing to be the face of this movement and potentially be what leads to my demise? Or, is this movement going to kill me for the cause? Yeah.
Yeah, you would have to find the right cause. I think anybody could potentially die for a cause.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's a cause that I would die for. I can't really think of. I mean, maybe you. I would die for the cause of you. Yeah. To save you. I would die for you. But I'd kill for you too. Oh, wait, let me get through this summary as well.
Sorry.
So basically, the Dangro, he has this boy who remains nameless, and the boy has to tell a story. And if he finishes the story before the night of the red moon, or before the sun comes up on the night of the red moon, then he is killed. And so the boy, Roman, has to continue to make up this story. And he decides to tell a story about a microbe, what they call the microbes, leader named Zama. And so you get a lot of history of the Ivory Coast. And basically, after this political upheaval, in 2010, I believe, the current president lost the election, claimed that the election was stolen from him, which caused a lot of instability. Sounds familiar? Yes, because this is what happens if you do not have a peaceful transfer of power. Anyway, 2010, huge stability in the Ivory Coast. One of the cities, Abidjan, it was so horrific that all these young kids end up banding together and calling themselves microbes, or that label was putting on them, like nasty bacteria. And they would walk around just with machetes, stopping people, cutting people. And then eventually people were so angry that kids accused of being a microbe were like being lynched out in the streets, which ends up happening in this film as well. And so we hear the story of this microbe leader, and that story sort of takes this like fantastical, whimsical turn, and it's really stunning. And as the boy is telling this story, the other prisoners are listening and acting it out. It's good.
Yes. Let's take a quick break. Hey, y'all. It's Amber with your last reminder of the month. If you are a Black business owner, please be sure to fill out the Google form. As you know or may not know, I will be showcasing 28 Black businesses during the month of February on my personal Instagram page, Burr_I am. So one business per day. Please fill out the Google form. That Google form also asks you to submit a headshot, so a real pretty picture of your face, not your brand, not your business, your face. And then also a 30-second video of you saying like, hey, my business is blank. I work in this community. This is what our brand and our mission is all about. This is why you need me. Happy Black History Month, everybody. A quick video like that. So please be sure to check out that Google form. Now let's get back to the show. Okay, so we are back. Ben just gave a really great summary of what happened in the book, but I do want to Ben just gave a great summary of what happened in the movie, the film, the cinema. But I do want to make and take note that we as the viewer and also Roman as the storyteller did not know when they began telling the story about this rule that if they finished the story before sunup, they were killed. So we had to slowly figure that out. So as you can imagine, this young kid is like wondering why everybody's so hype about this. And so he starts telling the story, and then eventually, spoiler alert, but we are discussing this, he gets told by one of the like old kooks in the pen that like, hey, just so you know, like, do not finish the story, like drag it on as long as you can, and because if you finish your story before you're supposed to, they will kill you. Which, I mean, what kind of pressure is that?
Yeah.
Like if you were told like, yo, go up there and tell a story, make sure it's good, and make sure it lasts all fucking night, bro.
Well,
I would be like, oh, okay, let's start with first grade. So here we go.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's the whole tradition of 1001 Nights, which is essentially it is the Shakespeare of the Arab world. It was written during the Arab Islamic Golden Age.
Okay.
And so the premise is that this king marries a woman and then kills the woman, and then marries another one, kills the woman. But in this case, he marries this young woman, and I forgot her name. I read these. It's a huge collection of stories. That's where Aladdin comes from.
Right. You said like Arabian Nights or something.
Yeah, 1001 Nights. And so he's going to kill this woman, and the woman starts telling him a story. And so he tells the king, the woman, his new bride, the new queen, tells the king a new story every single night for 1001 Nights.
Oh, I like that.
So
Thank you, because you casually dropped like, well, obviously this is this like Islamic story that you didn't know about. And I was like, well, some of us didn't know.
Yeah.
Some of us only grew up learning Jesus feeding the 5,000. Sorry. So every night so she basically tells him these stories in order to continue living.
Yeah, and there's elements of
I
Islam.
hate that the stakes are that high, but.
Right. It's a beautiful collection, and then of stories.
That king would be like, bitch, all right. If I was the queen, I would be singing. I would be, I'm sure Wild is going to be like, can we just take a night off, please?
I feel like if we threaten, Wild with death, it might scare the child enough to continue to read stories.
But she would have to be.
There's literary and mental death when you don't read every night, So
what you're saying is right now in this moment, we have decided to make sure Wild reads 1,000 books.
Well, like just read every night
for 1,000 days.
Just eternity. Like the threat. I think basically at the end, the woman does become the queen. I think that's how, that's the frame story, right? A frame story is the story within the story. Mm-hmm. Anyway, what I really remember is that Naguib Mahfouz, who's an Egyptian like the Egyptian literary writer wrote a sort of like fanfic about, or very, not fanfic, but inspired, conversation with 1001 Nights, and sort of gets more in detail. It's really, really good. But yeah, Islam has a lot to do with this, right? Like
I'm not gonna sit here and co-sign like I have all of this knowledge of Islam, because I don't. I know that you do, but I don't. But
right.
but as this movie was, I know that you love religion. So as this movie was progressing, you did a great job of being like, oh, he prays in the mosque because he has that prayer bump. And I was like, what's that? And you were like, it's almost this like bruise and sign of pride. It's like you pray so consistently at this mosque, like over 5 times a day, that you develop a bruising on your head. But those are things I appreciate that I got to watch it with you, because I would have easily missed those things. But the parts of the movie that I connected with were just this like power of storytelling. And I remember when I first tried to start doing comedy in Chicago, I was very afraid to call myself a comedian. Like I knew I was funny growing up, just like from the lunch table to, always every progress report saying like smart but talks too much, makes too many jokes. But it was very hard for me to say like, let me go take stand-up class 1 or let me go take improv 1. So my very first class in Chicago was a storytelling class. And I realized like all of my stories were funny, and or I was a funny storyteller. And I remember my teacher being like, you're just a comedian. Like, why don't you just like go do the thing you really want to do? Because it's clear you like to make people laugh. There is a form of stand-up and comedy that is storytelling, and there is vulnerability in that, so you should just do that. So that's when I really started to lean into like, let me just go take a stand-up class. But I love storytelling. Remember those days when very early when I was like, I want to do the Moth, which is a storytelling competition in Chicago. Yeah. And then what happened?
And I was like, I want to do it too. You're very inspiring. You inspire me to live better. Really? Yeah, absolutely. When I see you doing something, especially comedy, you make me want to be funnier, which is part of the reason when you asked me, what do you want for Christmas? I was like, sign me up for the comedy class, sign me up for an improv class so I can get to your level, get on your level.
Let me be clear. You would never, never get on my level. That's a song as well. But you can try. And I think, I do think we make a great team, and I was very excited in this movie to see the like one person telling the story, and then this beautiful like interpretive dance and the animation that the dancers had with each story. And these were like just men in the prison getting together and just like acting everything out. Like that felt so powerful to me. I got really revved up that. Did you ever in high school have those exercises where you had, you were homeschooled, sorry.
I went to high school for a little bit.
You went to a high school for like a year. Did you ever have those exercises where you had to choose like, there's 10 people, these are all of their occupations, you're stranded on the island, you can only choose 5 of them to be on the island with you?
Yeah, I'm familiar with the game.
So if you had to choose any 5 occupations, like to be with you on the island,
choose
what would they be?
A griot.
Hell yeah. Or I remember being the person that was like, I'd go with the doctor, I'll go with the architect, I'll go with the gardener, and then I'll go with like the poet or something. And all of my classmates being like, the poet is worthless. Like, why would you go with them? And I was like,
gives you motivation.
Who's gonna entertain you fucks like on this island? Or which is so fascinating. So
which is why Blackbeard was like, I'm losing control. What can I do? Oh, I'm going to create entertainment. Like that was a way for him to hold control. And eventually, once he realized that there was no hope for him, he does end up sort of killing himself. We see him do that in this very almost like symbolic way. But you're right. You choose the poet. Yeah, you would have survived on the desert island. I think
that's why a lot like when we talk about like communities, there was this one community I saw that like tried to sort of be, like leave society and start their own, and they were all like, we had a couple of skills, but it's really, really hard, blah blah blah. I'm like, you kind of need just like one person that's literally just there to like tell stories or see visions or add that entertainment factor, because we are so social, and like that's just a part of the human experience just as much as like healthcare and things like that. So it really feels good. Like in other cultures, I feel like the storyteller is like one of the highest positions. Even a teacher, like highest positions. Whereas in America, it's like, well, these jobs are like underpaid or whatever. So a starving artist, you're like, you don't make real things. Like I'm a doctor, I'm a real job. I'm a lawyer, I'm a real job.
Yeah, that definitely is something that we'll probably have to fight over and over and over and over again. And just our society has placed so much value on practicality and money. I did want to come back to the Islam part because what I found so fascinating is that you have a very religious Muslim character, and you could tell by the prayer bump. But at the same time, is this religious character believes in like a magical amulet, right? And so what I find so intriguing is, how the term that religious scholars will use is syncretism, is when you fuse one religious practice with another.
Okay.
And so how like African spirituality, whether it was, colonized by Christianity or Islam, still found its way, like those traditions, whether it be like Ifra, still found its way within these dominant religions, right? And so even with one of the characters, Zama, his father believes in like this magical amulet, and Zama is sort of like a mystical character in himself. And I thought that was like, it was just so fascinating because you have these realistic religions with very like strict, traditional practices, but then you have the mystical religious practices, and there's this easy fusion between the two, where, which we also saw when we talked about Eve's Bayou. Remember, like, that you would pray to Christ, but then you would still the medium
go to a
would
psychic and do voodoo.
So there was no disconnect
conflict
between, which the director even says, and that it's important. A quote he says that it's important today to make films in Africa which include our vision of the world, and that he calls it's not logical. The Ivory Coast is not too logical like a European culture. The border is very fine between real things and magical things, invisible worlds and physical worlds. And so Islam is a very like physical religious practice. Like the Quran is the actual word of God, right? Like, and it has to be read in Arabic. That nothing else, translations, you don't call them Qurans. You say that's the translation of the Quran. And the practice of prayer beads, bowing, bowing or praying towards Mecca, that's very physical. And so, but the fusion with the mystical, where it's implied that Blackbeard turns into a doe at some point, right? So that fusion with the storytelling, I don't know. It's really hard for me to understand in a lot of ways. Like I'm like, oh, this is my impression to be like, this is stupid, right? It's illogical. To think
or dismiss it as,
I'm dismissive.
Yeah.
Where I think you're more, because you practice yoga and you're just more stretched out.
Yeah, because yoga is yoga is mostly about like finding things or maintaining things in this like equanimous state. So you can have, I think you can believe in ghosts and you can believe in God. I think you can have natural hair and also slap a wig on every now and then. Like everything doesn't have to be in conflict. You can still, those were two very different examples, but
I can get behind the physical behind like the different hair, but
yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's fresh on my mind because I saw a lot of discourse online today about like people with locked hair arguing with people. And when I say people, I mean black people. Black people with locked hair arguing with black people who like wear wigs as a protective style.
No, that's a great
and I was
example.
Like, there's this like no one's better than the other. It's the problem lies when you think that your natural hair is inferior to the protective style or the straight hair or whatever. But is it okay to do both? Like, Yes, like both of those worlds can exist, but there's just like a lot of that there. You know?
Yeah, we're coming back to this idea of the binary, and I say binary in terms of the capital B, this desire to create two separate entities and that they cannot fuse, right? And that's, that's the very definition of queerness, is that you fuse things together. To be queer is not to be one or the other.
Right. And
we oftentimes create this false binary, and these false binaries create violence, tension, and there's this really incredible, beautiful scene in the film that actually reminded me from the Sword in the Stone. You remember that?
Yes.
Do you remember? And you remember at the end of the film where the witch and the wizard start fighting? Mm-hmm. And they transfer into different kinds of things,
like animals or something.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So that there's a scene where this like mystical, powerful queen who has magical abilities ends up fighting her brother, who also has magical abilities, and she turns into a bird and then an elephant, and he turns fire and turns into a thread, and he turns into a needle, and they're like battling each other by turning into different things, which was like very, very mystical and cool. But they are brother and sister. And this desire, black people they're both black, and they're both hairstyles.
Not the Sword in the Stone. This is...
what you're talking about online.
Right.
Like these are your like brothers and sisters, and, as far as like sharing an identity, and you're arguing and fighting and battling out, where does that end?
Yeah, I mean, and that happens with, tons of things, right? Even, going back to me, like stumbling on negative comments and being like, oh, that's a bummer. But it's like two things can be true at once. You can actually watch a video of me and you and think this is negative and toxic. And then you can also laugh at something that you saw later. And we are in this space where it is not okay, and it should be okay, but it's not okay to agree with like 95% of what someone does and then be in tension with the 5%.
Yeah.
And I wish we weren't there because like it makes it really hard to just see people as people. Like there are 95% of the things that you and I are going to do together, people are going to be on board with. And then the minute people find out like you have a dildo and you like the dildo and you're bisexual and I'm bisexual, people are like, well, I was with them till that, or I was with them until I found out Ben was an atheist, or I was with them until I found out Amber called him a bitch. That was highly disrespectful. I'm out of here.
By the way, I have lots of Christian friends.
Right. Oh, you're gonna be that person? It's like
I do.
So first off,
I do.
I know
I'm
3
not
black
gonna
people. I just want to name off the
my
top.
father is a pastor. I still get along with them. Like I would die for you to practice your religion. Like I would never want someone to be oppressed because of their religion.
Right. Okay.
But there's this assumption that people who are atheists want, literally, I'm serious, like they want to
connect the dots for me, because I was like, I'm confused about death.
Well, I'm not a militant atheist, but there's an assumption that all atheists are militant and that we want to like destroy their churches and burn down their churches.
Oh, okay. I see what you're saying now. Well, yeah, that's the thing, like and I don't want to use the word divisive, because even that now is just like it belongs to like one group of people, right? But it is very much so like that. Like I've had friends who are like, I love this and this and this that you do, but like this thing gives me pause, or I don't know. People get really caught up and then they're like instant unfollow because of what you said about mommy baby products. It's like, fine, like And it's like, that's just not how people are. Like, I'm trying to do even a better job about, like, interacting with someone and being like, this one thing gives me pause about them, but, like, they're cool. You know? Like, as far as content creators, as far as who I have in my feed and in my world, like, we're just humans. Like, there are going to be some parts of people that you just don't agree with. Like, and I get it. If they're like, yeah, but I hate black people, obviously, like, that's a huge thing. Yeah. But if there's somebody that's like, I don't know, I need to go to church every Sunday, like I can be friends with you, and it's just we're we're far away from that. But speaking of queerness, before we warp up the show, I do want to. Can we talk for 2 seconds about the trans character? Do you want to? There was a trans character in this story that was like sort of an integral part.
I mean, yeah, let's get into that. So one of my big problems with the film was how the
Make
trans,
it clean. Yes,
it was how the trans character was presented. And I don't think it's fair for trans people to constantly have their representation like focused in trauma and pain. And so there's a scene that I thought was unnecessary, and though it might have been realistic, where you get the impression that this trans character is about to be raped, and it doesn't. They don't show anything. It is disturbing, but you could have. I think it could have been handled a little bit more sensitively.
Yeah, you're kind of like, what did this add to the story?
Yeah, and it's not necessarily that this specific film has that scene in it, right?
Right.
Or the trans character at one point, it does, participates in a plot to kill somebody else.
Right.
Right. Which that character's motivation and why they did it. The character's name is Sexy. It's fine. But
I mean, I don't think it's her name. I think that's just what everybody calls her.
Yeah, that's what. Yeah. So that within itself is fine, but when you look at trans representation in films, they're so mired in like trauma, rape, assault, hurt, pain. And so this felt for me just another example of that.
Yeah.
When I look at it within a megatext.
Yeah, and it's hard because I found myself, giving them points for I'm like, okay, no one's misgendered her. She has speaking lines. She's basically has a boyfriend in the story who's like one of the top dogs, and everybody knows it and everybody respects this relationship. But yeah, it is very hard when one of those like intro scenes were like so nerve-wracking, and when we look back and think about it, like, why did that scene have to exist? Like, I think they were trying to say like this is a movie about like a very animalistic, hyper masculine prison, but there were tons of ways that was shown without those parts needing to be there.
Question for you. So the director mentioned that like he actually had most of the characters, he said 25% of the actors were actually in prison at one point.
Wow.
Yeah. And
that's powerful.
Yeah. Is it yeah. My question for you, is that a sigh for you, or is that something to celebrate?
I think that's something to celebrate.
Yeah.
I mean, when we're talking about like authentic casting for things, it's very, it's inspiring to hear that like, oh, you're actually having conversations with the people that this film reflects. I get disappointed even when I see biopics where I'll say this, like, this is an aside, but you'll connect the dots. Recently, the Tommy Lee and Pamela Anderson maybe biopic or series is dropping soon, and I remember there was some discourse where the girl who played Pam Anderson was like, I've never had a conversation with her, but I don't feel like I need to have one. Like, and Pam Anderson's like, are you kidding? Like, it's very strange that someone can say like, I don't like, even like Pamela Anderson is still like very much alive. Like, she's not on her way out or anything like that. Yeah. And it's like, y'all didn't want to set up just like a lunch about the person that you're portraying. Whereas, when Selena died and they were making Selena, like J-Lo went and stayed in Selena's family's home and had several conversations and looked through pictures and got grounded in like, this is who this character is supposed to be. Now, I know that there's a lot of discourse about like, she's Puerto Rican and Selena's Mexican and why was this chosen? But I think it hits different when, unless this person's like, if this person's not dead, I think you should have a conversation with them. I heard the same thing about Patrizia Gucci. Like, Gaga didn't have a conversation with her. Yeah, she was in prison, but y'all could have still facilitated a conversation. I think it's very strange when you're portraying something that you don't have any sort of touch point to. So I like that, like, I also, lastly about this, I also don't know how hard it is to find employment or transition back into society once you've been in prison abroad, but it's really fucking hard in the U.S. And so if there is a movie that is like, hey, we want to hear from like people who have been inmates and do this film, like, how would y'all feel about it? Or I think inmates could almost be like sensitivity readers in that way. Am I like way off with that?
No, I think the only thing is that when, for example, my example of this is The Wired. The Wired, hired actual drug dealers, and so when you play, when you're dealing with something traumatic like prison and you're having people play this out, could that reawaken like traumatic memories, or is it like, yeah.
I think anybody who's been through something like that wants to say like,
perhaps
I want to talk to my Abbott Elementary just did a funny bit about that, where this like white teacher was trying to teach them about like these riots in South Philly, and another teacher was like, well, my uncle, my cousin, he was a part of them. Like, let's bring him in and talk to you about it. Yeah. And obviously he learned like a completely different story about it. But I was watching at the bar the other night. I don't know if you remember this, but did you see what movie was playing at the bar we were at?
No.
So we were at this bar and Twilight was on.
Oh, really?
And it was the scene where like, what's her name? Bella was like pregnant and stuff.
Oh yeah.
And I was looking at it in my peripheral vision, and I was like, her belly and just how she's like walking and acting is just so fucking fake. Like, it's very clear that she's not pregnant. And I of course, now that I am pregnant, I'm like heightened senses to when people are pregnant in film and cinema, and it's so frustrating.
So she should have gotten pregnant for the film, maybe.
I agree. Yeah. Yes, correct. Or at least had discourse about like, hey, I'm pregnant. Let me show you like the waddle, the lean, the ache, like.
Or someone on set to sort of coach her through that. Yeah.
Or even, Sex and the City. There's this one part back in the old times where Miranda's pregnant, and it's like on episode 1 of the season, she's like got a little bump, feeling nauseous, and then like on the second episode, she's like already in the 3rd trimester. I was like, it's not like that. Yeah. She should have been pregnant this whole season. Like, and I remember getting sort of infuriated about that. So I don't know. I think it's important to cast authentically. It's cool.
I mean, they could have hired a person who's a coach who was pregnant, who could have sort of coached, Kristen Stewart to do the shit she needed to do.
Yeah, it was just like,
if there was a
cringy.
pregnant person on set,
right?
Been like, no, you need to be doing this, or like demonstrating in the moment.
Right.
Yeah. The other thing is that they wanted to use a lot of slang in the film as well. Okay. And like 80% of, so I guess this would be a sigh, but like 80% of prisoners at Lamaka are actually under the age of 30. They're very, very young. They imprison because microbes, the microbes, the lack of employment for young men. And so you'll see a lot of parallels. So between, I think, the American prison system. For me, it reminded me a lot of that. And I just being aware, like providing a trigger warning, if you do watch this, like it can be, it's intense. Like it's an intense film.
There were a couple times I was like, what is that little boy doing here?
Yeah.
Like that child is a 12-year-old.
That was intentional.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's an intentional decision. I guess finally, like when I saw the trailer for this, I thought there was going to be more fantastical elements.
For sure.
So I was a little disappointed about that. But other than that,
what would you call this? Like magical realism, dystopian?
Yeah, magical realism.
To the point where when the fantastical things did happen, they felt a little misplaced.
Yeah, they did. They
remember that fight scene? I was like, is it bad CGI or is it just like this hasn't happened all movies? So
the budget, but yeah.
Okay.
And also the scene, the fantastical element is. And I think this is done intentionally, right? Because this boy is required to tell a story about this gang leader, but he starts his story in like 19th century Africa, like the turn of the century, and then he jumps into modern day. But that fusion between past and present is a point that's trying to be made here.
Yeah, until the crowd called him out for it. I was like,
yeah. Well, because he keeps on just making things up because he doesn't want to fucking die.
Wouldn't you, fool?
What size did you have?
I agree with you. It just like I said at the top of the episode before I let you even get into the summary, the running time felt very lengthy.
You know what else is long? Parenting.
Oh, good. It's like, where are you going with that?
Parenting is long, so get used to long things.
That's fine. I mean, but parenting is long, and Wild's not going to stay age 2 for like 7 years.
Right.
You know, so you see the natural progression.
The film was an hour and a half.
I know, but there was something like the first 40 minutes flew.
Mm-hmm.
Like, remember we were like, damn, we're halfway through it. Or like first 45 minutes flew. And then near that second 30-minute chunk, we were like, all right, let's pause, order some brunch. And then we got back into it. And then the last 20 minutes, we were just like, all right, now.
Yeah.
Wrap it up.
Fair enough.
But yeah, it starts very strong. Please let us know what y'all think about this film. I think it's really important. It's one of those films where you're like, I won't be watching that again, but I'm glad I watched it.
Yep.
And not because it was bad. It's just like that was so. It's like Moonlight. It's like that was really great, and it only needs one viewing because this is not your regular Friday night. You know.
I think some films need teachers. Like Moonlight requires, I think, a little bit extra help to watch. Like watching it with someone.
It's really good.
Support each other through watching it and discuss it afterwards over like some wine, non-alcoholic for you, alcoholic for me. But I think like this is a perfect film to watch with somebody. Mm-hmm.
But it's not like, oh, Sierra's coming over. Y'all want to watch Moonlight? It's like, what?
Yeah. Like, oh, let me just put this on. Oh, what are you putting on? Moonlight?
Like, Schindler's List. It's like, girl,
you need to like be in a right state of mind. You need to be able to think about it, reflect. So
correct. Sankofa is like that too. We probably said that last week as well. Well, Ben, with that being said, beautiful, talented, and now an improv student. Why don't you warp up the show?
Yeah. In conclusion, watch Night of the Kings. Phillip LaCote is the fucking shit. Read those articles we put in the description. You can watch if you have time. Go ahead and watch his interview by the African American, Cinematic Association, African American Film Critic Association. There we go. African American Film Critic Association. Said it right. Yeah, check it out.
Thanks, Ben. Thank you so much for listening to another episode of the Sci-Fi Side Podcast. Up next, remember we pushed this back, but we're doing it this time. Needle in a Time Stack, y'all. We got Cynthia Erivo. We got, what's his name from Hamilton? Leslie Odom Jr. It's going to be a good time. Orlando Bloom is all up in the shit. And it's going to be...
You haven't watched Lord of the Rings.
I was thinking about Pirates. But yeah.
Pirates of the Caribbean.
There's two types of people in this world. Who the people that see Orlando Bloom's name and do Lord of the Rings, and then the people that see it and see Pirates of the Caribbean.
That's funny.
Anyway, we're not talking about white men right now. Be sure to watch Needle in a Time Stack on Amazon Prime, and we will see y'all next week for the show. Bye, y'all.
Bye.
I
got the last word.
No, well, that's bye.
Bye. If you look at the thing, mine was said first.
All right, bye, y'all.